Because I ask myself, what is actually happening when I go into my past life? And for me, for example, I'm like, I was a rapist. I'm like, I experienced myself as a rapist. I go into this past life. I was like, what is actually happening? And I noticed it is expression of an intense energy that feels really true or really in resonance with a certain part in me, a certain blockage in me, something that is stuck or contracted. And now I'm able to put this into words, memories, sensations, feelings, whatever. I'm able to give this a name, basically. I'm able to give this an expression. And once I do that, it can release, something releases, something lets go, and it's able to move through me. And that's the healing.
Tell me what you think, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But it's also resembling the birth process. You know, you're in this really dark place and everything is, and then the canal open and you see the light, and all of a sudden you're reborn. And like if you're struggling with quote unquote anger issues or like burnout or whatever for your whole life, it's like you're in this dark night of the soul and this dark womby place, and you feel like you're being pushed out and something in you wants to come out, but it's not really there. And then at some point you're letting go and you're actually, you know, letting it come to the surface and letting it grow up and mature.
Okay, but I mean, it's a bit weird because I never know if you were still there or not, but so far you've always been there when I asked, so like a child that is always...
Is there a deeper topic at play here, Jannick?
Is he there or not?
Mom?
What a perfect segue into this week's topics.
That's true. Yeah. Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Bypasses podcast today with the three of us, me, Jannick, Tim, and Ashley. And as you might have just heard, we are going to talk about trauma, about childhood, and about birth trauma, past life, and probably also a bit of psychology applied to your teenage years, our teenage years. So that's going to be really interesting. And why we came up with this topic is because last week I did something that I usually never do. I read a book.
Jannick is blonde, so yeah.
Usually I never read a book. I've never read a book in my life. I hate intelligent people.
I read a book until 1:30 a.m. at night because it was so fascinating. And it is the book The Way of the Psychonaut by Stanislav Grofs. And for those of you who don't know this guy, he's a legend. He probably did over 50 years of therapy with psychedelics, mostly LSD, acid. And he then invented holotropic breathing in order to get people into this holotropic state, this altered state of consciousness that is similar to the states that you can get in on psychedelics, because he believes that this is kind of the state where healing happens, basically. So this is the state where old stuff comes up that's usually not able to come to the surface. This is the state where you make the unconscious conscious, which is what you need to do in order to heal, because all the things that are repressed unconsciously in you, they are stuck in the body, they are stuck in the mind, and you're not conscious of them. So they rule your life, they control your life, but you're not conscious of it. So that's what he did, and he wrote many books, and one of them is The Way of the Psychonaut. And in this particular part of the book, I was reading about how he basically analyzed most of the well-known psychologists of the Freud era, the psychoanalysts, and after, with including Carl Jung as well, and not only analyzing them, but also kind of like explaining their shortcomings from his perspective, based on the research that he had done and the psychedelic therapy that he did over the years. And it's super interesting. He's very convinced of what he found out and what he does. But it's so interesting to read his take on this. And he brings a lot of the things back to birth trauma. So we want to discuss today what we think about it, what our experience with that is, based also on our work and the emotional release sessions that we do and other healing modalities. And he also brings a lot of stuff back to past life, because he experienced that people who went into the sessions, into psychedelic trips or also holotropic breathing sessions, they come in with a pain, with a contraction in the body or whatever, right? And then they're like, oh, I have chest pain. He explains this in his book. I have chest pain, and then they go into the session, and then they have a lot of resistance. They can't really breathe, and then after a while, when they get into the state, they remember something from their childhood. In this case, it was this guy who was digging a hole, and then his friends were kind of like messing around at the surface of the around the hole, and then a lot of earth crashed into the hole, and he was stuck there, and he couldn't move, and he couldn't get out, and he had issues breathing. And then the parents came and they helped him out and they rescued him. But for him, it was a near-death experience. And when he kept breathing, he went into a memory or images of his birth, where he was caught in the birth canal and on this particular part where he had the pain and couldn't get out. And so he relived that and felt all the pain of that. And then after that, he was in a probably what he called and he interpreted as past life, where he was on the battlefield and he got hit on his shoulder and he fell to the floor, and then people kept like running over him and he died, and then his soul went out of his body and he saw everything from above. So he relived that death on the battlefield, and then his soul came back into his body as he was laying there and breathing. And afterwards, the pain was gone and he was able to breathe normally again. And so this is a very good example for the healing process that Stanislav Grof advocates for, which is basically reliving the past fully, being able to express that, to fully feel that, and then also going through all the layers, because he says there's a lot of layers. There's the personal layer in this life, then there's the prenatal layer, which is the time before your birth and during your birth, and then there's the past life or transgenerational layer where everything can happen. A lot of archetypes come in here. You relive those, or you kind of like go into the energy of those archetypes, or you experience just things where that's not biographical, that's not part of your life you experience. And yeah, I think this is super exciting, and I'm very interested in your guys' take on this, and also if you have experienced something like this yourself or in sessions with clients.
I love it. This is basically how most sessions are running. That I would say personally, like I haven't myself had a birth regression where I've been in the birth canal. I've definitely had sessions where I've felt the feelings like in the womb before birth, and that's a lot of the grief and topics, because I had siblings that didn't make it. So that's also what the fetus picks up on in the womb, is like the energy of who was there before them as well. So for the majority of my clients, I also don't get many people going into birth processes, but they are in processes from 12 and younger. So they're indeed like when there's a traumatic event or something that happened that's left this imprint or incomplete feeling inside of the body that's then maybe looping in future patterns. Like sometimes you have one experience age 6 and that loops then again when you're 16 and then 27 and then 30, and then they're like, why does this keep happening? It's like, yeah, let's go to the source of like where the body is resisting this contraction. I remember the very good example we were all taught at the training of if somebody's body was in like a car crash, that in a session their body almost contorts back into the position it was in. So the final parts, like wringing out a towel, like the final parts of fear and helplessness and the trauma energy that's present can finally be like squeezed out, so that then the body lets go, and then the tension is gone and the injury is gone almost. So yeah, this part I find really interesting. I'm curious to hear also from Tim's side, because the past life thing is like a whole nother section. Like maybe let's stick with the birth part first, and then we can go to the second part after. I'm also curious to hear like how your births were, because I think it's always interesting to hear like the variety and difference, and maybe we can all analyze each other a bit. Of like, yeah, makes sense
Love
that
that.
was.
I love that.
Yeah, I think I like personally, I would be curious as to what we talk about when we talk about past lives, because in the spiritual new age cosmos, there's, lots of talk about past lives. And I think it's mistaking a spiritual concept for magical thinking often, which is, yeah, it's more fantasy than actually real. That's my critique. But also, I had like very powerful sessions with Angelo, who was here on the podcast, where I was having a quote unquote past life experience. I'm still doubting whether that was literally a past like karmic thing that got resolved in that session. But as a matter of fact, like Jannick said, it doesn't really matter, because it was a healing experience for me, and it taught me about something within myself. So whether that was the thing that I encountered, the energies, and the visions that I had were like archetypal, or were like more parts of me, or whatever, doesn't really matter, because it represented something within me. And I feel like what Ashley just talked about, I always think of it like closing loops. So there's open loops from childhood, needs that were unmet, or moments where we were not seen in our pain, or something really, something terrible happened to us. Like in my instance, also a car crash. And I feel like with this car crash topics, my hands are like really, really tight. And when I'm driving in a car, literally, and I'm on the back seat, in some moments, especially when I'm driving with my parents, like adrenaline rushes into my hands, and I feel really, I feel as though a car crash is about to happen. And I feel these moments where these patterns come up, and also, especially in a session, they're an invitation for us to close that loop, to give our body, to give our system something it lacked in the past. And for that to happen, it doesn't matter if it's like we get through that need fulfillment through like a past life process, or like a birth regression, whatever. I feel like I'm very open for that, and like I'm not too I'm not too fixed on this is a past life, this is like a birth trauma, whatever. I'm more interested in what's happening in the process, and in the here and now. But still, I find it interesting. I researched a bit about Stanislav Grof, and I find it interesting, but it can't be confirmed really, because it's so psychological. Like there's very little data that really shows that this is like that birth trauma is a thing, or like past life experiences are a thing.
Yeah.
So that's I'm quite open with that.
I love that, and I love what Ashley brought in about this basically happening in fractals. Our core wound basically showing up in life as fractals, meaning that it's the same kind of topic or theme that loops and loops and loops and loops. And I think this is not only the case if we look at healing. I think this is the case for our life in general, because our wounds make up who we are. So it's not only something that we need to heal, it's also something that basically constitutes us. That's like our essence is also very closely related to our wounds. All our strengths are related to our wounds. So we are basically a fractal expression of consciousness that it has been formed or shaped in a certain way and goes through life. And the more we can become conscious of that, the more we almost surrender to it, and it's less of an issue for us and more of a just like enjoying this particular expression of consciousness that consciousness or God or whoever decided to be and to experience through us, and becoming this vessel for that, and without resistance to it. which is a big part for me to healing. And yes, if we look at it like these fractals, it, like Tim said, it doesn't really matter, right? It's not really important. Was this a real past life, or does it just seem as a past life, or did it just seem as a random memory that I don't have no idea where it came from? Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen. What matters is that this is a particular expression of this theme that's part of my life, and it's a very intense expression of it, and very close to how it actually feels. Because I ask myself, what is actually happening when I go into my past life? And for me, for example, I'm like, I was a rapist. I'm like, I experienced myself as a rapist. I go into this past life. I was like, what is actually happening? And I noticed it is expression of an intense energy that feels really true, or really in resonance with a certain part in me, a certain blockage in me, something that is stuck or contracted. And now I'm able to put this into words, memories, sensations, feelings, whatever. I'm able to give this a name, basically. I'm able to give this an expression. And once I do that, it can release, something releases, something lets go, and it's able to move through me. And that's the healing. And if it's through something my mind calls a past life or not, it doesn't really matter. And the same with the birth. It is pre-memory, right? So it can't really be like real memories of birth. It must be something that is just feels true. And it feels true because, yes, of course, this is your birth. This is the birthing of you, of your particular constitution and theme into reality, into the manifest world. Your birth into the manifest world. And so, of course, there we get really close to the root. There, your whole theme that plays out your whole life will show up for the first time and in its roots. So if we get there, we must, per definition, be very close to this theme that makes you up in your life. So yeah, this is really fascinating to me. And I'm excited to go and curious to go into more personal stories about this, so we can analyze each other, like Ashley said.
There's also something to add, is like, it's good to not get attached like to these stories. And that's what I've just noticed also in the scene. Like, there are people like, yeah, this is because of this past life, and that means I'm this kind of person. And in reality, one of the main, we discussed it for an hour at the training I was at a month ago, of like what makes this story more true than the other story. And the final conclusion was, how can any story be true? Because it's a story. And in any moment, it can change meaning to you. It can change what it means. So was it ever true to begin with? No, it's just a form of identification in that moment. And it sounds like very simple, but everyone was like, fuck yeah, like, duh. Okay, no story is true. Beautiful. Take what you can get from it in that moment, but don't let it become this part of your identity. That's why it was obviously the expand the box. Like, that's how you expand your box, is by letting go of the attachment to certain stories about yourself.
This is so true. I want to add something, Tim, because I can see you also want to talk on this. This is so beautiful because it's not the story that matters. The story is just a coping for the repression, for the thing that you don't want to feel, or the thing that you're holding back. So you make up this story, or you make up that story, and it's all to be safe from the buried emotions, from the buried energies that you are not able to make conscious. So by becoming conscious of this, what you just said, the story doesn't matter. You realize, oh, this is all just a different expression, basically, of identification, of moving away from what wants to be seen, from this wound. And I explain it by, oh yeah, like you said, this is because I was a king in a past life. This is because my mom had pain when I was birthed, or whatever it is. And it's just like, yeah, okay, but what does it get you to? What's the utility of believing that story? And then you notice, it's to stay safe. It's to not go to the emotion. Okay, I understand.
It's interesting that we talk about this, because I had a quasi Satori kind of experience a few days ago. I think it was a proper, like, transpersonal mystical experience that I had, and it was exactly because of what we just talked about. and even in us talking about, we're trying to point at an experience that is very, very difficult to describe, because in that moment that I just talked about, all the stories about myself and the thought patterns were just stripped away from my consciousness for a moment, and I was sitting here, and it wasn't a coaching session. I had I was coached, and also the coach that I worked with, it was Finn, who also did the Red Room, described that he had it was also crazy for him and what happened in the transference, because he could feel what happened within me. It felt like we just dismantled a story that felt like it was taking over 70% of my mind space, and that was suddenly stripped away, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm thinking in this, I'm believing the story 70% of the time. And what happened then was, I was sitting here in total stillness, and I could watch that everything, even the impulse to say something, is coming, is generated for some reason somewhere in my in my mind, and is sent into my consciousness. And in that moment, I was even questioning, why bother talking at all? Why, I could say this, but then I also could speak on this thought and this and this. It was very strange, but also really relieving, on the other hand. And I understood how monks and in various spiritual traditions, people went into complete silence, because in that moment it felt like, I don't need to talk right now. It's so peaceful, and also it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't add anything to the moment. And what I like about what I like about your guys's view, and I also like that we are so congruent and lined up with that, is that the way we approach a process, and our own therapeutic processes, is very much grounded in the moment. And we just we kind of the goal, or it's not even a goal, but the intention is just to let the body and the mind do its thing, to completely detach from controlling anything, and just let the body come up with what it wants to come up with, and let the mind come up with what it wants to come up with, and then just letting that flow, and creating a vessel to express that. And through that, we're also just just like I just explained in that satori moment, very briefly, we're detaching from all of the stories, and we're letting them, closing. We're giving ourselves a chance to close these loops, who want to close themselves all the time. And that's very beautiful, and that's very much, on the contrary to people who are there are people obsessed with past lives, obsessed with inner child healing, obsessed with I was recently at a party, and I was getting annoyed and triggered. That's maybe also my topic, but people were 80% of the conversations were just about astrology, and yeah, you're Virgo and Leo and blah, and analyzing each other. And I was like, oh god, what is this? Sometimes people are really just some of these concepts who are made to heal can really sustain trauma, and really keep us stuck in a story, and magical thinking, and more in our head than in our embodied experience. And yeah, that's also that's also could also be true for birth trauma, and I am like that because my birth was fucked up. Yeah, could be true, could also just be a story. I don't
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
love that. Exactly. My teacher, Scott Killaby, he always asked, "Do you use it to stay safe?" And do you have to believe in the story to stay safe? Is it a story that you just think is fun? It's yeah, it's just fun to dive deep into astrology, or it needs to be that way. It's my safe haven. It's my it's that or nothing. And then you're just using it to stay safe, to not go to the buried emotions again. You don't want to face, usually in the spiritual scene, you don't want to face your anger. You don't want to face it. Don't want to face the big energies. You don't want to face your power. You don't want to face your need, your desires, even your desire for status, for power, for sex, for whatever it is. And so you are just playing small and staying safe with all these stories. And are you guys open to dive into birth stories? Or what we could do as well is go into teenage psychology as well. But as we've learned now, the teenage psychology is just a pattern that will repeat, and the roots are always a bit earlier. So yeah, I'd vote for going into personal birth stories.
Yeah. We can do another episode on teenager and bring some teenage rage in.
Yeah.
Tim is very good at doing those impressions.
So
like, Mom.
That's me. That's me right after birth. Actually, it's me right after birth. I researched on Stanislav Grof, and I think before we do that, I want to just quickly bring in something important that we can also build our discussion of our own births on, because Stanislav Grof described 4 basic perinatal matrices, which means there's 4 stages to birth, which all have their corresponding state, feeling, and this state and this feeling is playing out later in life as very specific themes. For example, the first stage before labor, which he called really cool names, it could all be like, I don't know, futuristic sci-fi movie names, whatever. The amniotic universe, which is before labor, where the baby, it's preconception, it's pre-birth, it's in a peaceful state, floating and undifferentiated in the union with the mother and the cosmos. And that's just healthy. There's no contractions yet or anything that is like threatening the baby. And that is playing out later as this, according to Stanislav Grof, as could play out as like this feeling of a mystical union, oceanic bliss, or also if this is disrupted in the birth process, of like detachment and existential alienation and panic attacks. And we can just, I'll try to be as quick as possible, because I think this is interesting, and maybe you guys at home can listen and maybe see if in your guys' birth process there were like anything was happening, and maybe you can find out if the themes in your life are corresponding to your birth process. Could be, and maybe it's giving you a bit of information, and maybe Jannick and Ashley, you can do the same. The second stage is the start of labor, when the contractions are beginning. He calls it cosmic engulfment and no exit. The feeling is like trapped and helpless and crushed, and also if you imagine that there's like something is happening. You were in this oceanic bliss, and something weird is happening, and this feeling also plays out later in life as anxiety, claustrophobia, victimhood, or existential despair, like really this feeling of being trapped and almost like panicky. And the third stage,
to
want to say something?
BPM2 is, in his book he always calls it BPM. It's a short form, because it's this like these 4 phases. And this BPM2 is, it's hopeless, because you don't see the opening of the uteral tract yet. So you really think you're stuck. It's dark, you're stuck, hopeless, no way out. This is the state. And this is what many of us are avoiding, because we're always like, but there needs to be hope, there needs to be the light. In this state, no. There is just contraction. You don't understand why. You just came out of paradise. Now you are in this contraction. You have a lot of pain. You think you're dying, and there's no way out. You have no idea what's happening. This is BPM2.
Interesting. Yeah. I definitely feel something happening as I read this. Let's move on. BPM3 is the death rebirth struggle, which is the passage to the canal. So the cervix is opening, And what I just remembered is, like what I just recognized is that it's like maybe birth is not only painful for the mother, but also if you imagine
It's
you're a baby and
100%.
you just get pressed through this very narrow canal. And if this, my birth, for example, was really, really long, I think over 12 hours or something, I think
It's not
even
that long,
longer.
Tim.
And yeah, but but I mean, if you imagine a baby being in that state for like a really long time, it's quite intense, not only for the mother but for the baby. That's just what
That's what it's
that's
all
just what
about.
I learned
That
through
the pain of the baby. That's
reading
what
that.
it's all about.
Yeah,
That's why, because the baby,
yeah, and
yeah,
physical
physical
pain.
pain,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
baby
yeah.
thinks it's dying. It doesn't know what's going on. It just came out of eyes. This is what it's
Hmm.
all about. This is what he says. It's this intensity of birth gives explanation to all the intensity in life that we feel later on better than anything else, because what else comes close to the birth experience in its level of intensity?
Mm.
It's kind of
Yeah,
savage.
and
So
then
God's like,
this.
well, it's a really shitty planet you've incarnated onto, so we got to prepare you from the first moment. So
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, what is resulting from that? The themes are rage. It's also connected to sexual energy, like the whole anger topic, warrior drive, and also a life and death crisis, like maybe the feeling that you think you're dying often, or that you're interested in death, like as a concept, or things like this. But yeah, indeed, it's a pretty savage way to be thrown onto this planet. And the last part is like the death rebirth experience, as opposed to the struggle in the third one. The final push and liberation into the world. The feeling as release, triumph, and transcendence, which could resemble in later experiences as breakthroughs, awakenings, and transformations. And I mean, this is talked about, a whole lot. It's also a symbol, like being reborn, like this. Oh yeah, I feel like I'm reborn, and I feel like I just gave birth to something. Is always this feeling of, okay, something in me evolved, something in me has transformed, reawakened. I had a breakthrough. So yeah, these are the 4 stages, and I'm curious. Uh, Maybe Ashley, you want to start and sharing about your birth experience, because I know you worked quite a bit on it, and maybe you can share a bit about it and what you learned about yourself.
I was overdue, so I was chilling in the utopia state. I was not premature. I was very happy to be floating around in the cosmic universe, whatever
Understandably.
the phrase was. Came out with a lot of hair, even like already. Like my mom was like, "It's time, get out." And I was the second pregnancy, so my brother didn't survive past like 6 months in the womb. So I felt, even on reflection, like a lot of pressure of like there must have been a lot of stress and pressure from my parents of like, this one needs to work, and like what if it happens again, and a lot of that
Mm.
present in the emotional field. My birth was very long, I think more than 2 days from water breaking to birth. And yeah, my mum said I had a very big head. There was a lot of tearing, a lot of pain. And of course, like born in a hospital, not born in like a nice birthing center with calm music, like bright lights, nurses, doctors, lots of checks and stuff happening. So uh, yeah, I could still ask my mum more. Like I had definitely asked her about the birthing story when I started emotional release work, but maybe still it was like the high levels, like the practicalities and things like this. I feel like I could ask her more about the emotions that were present. And if I listen to the 4 different states, I would say that probably the state number 3 is probably the most resonant with like some of the topics Tim brought in about anger, sexuality, and this like feeling. This maybe all Scorpios have this process. They're just stuck in the canal a bit too long. But this feeling of like, I feel like my life feels like it's in stage 3, and then like every now and then it's like you're tapping into different states. Like sometimes when I'm very blissed out, I can tap into state number 1, or after a big process, I feel like I've reached number 4 of like completion of some like transformation that's happened. What was number 2 again? My brain is forgetting. The water breaking but stuck.
Dark and pain.
That one I resonate with the least, to be honest. Like I don't have much of that present. Yeah.
Interesting, because that for me was the one where I felt like reading it, I could feel, like the anxiety. Actually, Ashley, you don't have much anxiety, right? You're not like an anxious person per se. Like you don't have like social anxiety, or you worry what people think about you.
No, but I think that also comes
least,
just
as
on the
surface,
as
right?
a protection. Like in the training last week, we were looking at the box of like, okay, well, when there's superiority complex, it's also because there's inferiority. So it rarely comes as necessarily anxious, but it's more just because there's the barrier is up of like, well, I'm not going to care what you think. Like, fuck it. So the anger energy is more the protection from social anxiety. The only thing that does and has in the past given me intense anxiety, which has led to panic attacks, has been money. Like the existential feeling around like money and payments. I mean, Jannick held me through a very intense panic attack, even like not within the last 6 months, about that kind of thing. So it's that, and again, it's the life or death feeling that's more linked to it, as opposed to we lived in a society where it wasn't so intense, the fear of not having money or like what would happen as the repercussions. Maybe I wouldn't have had such an intense response to it. But hey, we live in late stage capitalism, so it's the focus of of all of our actions at the moment.
Wow, there's so much in there, and I'm sensing that I'm gonna call it overindulgence or over focus on this stage 3 topics. They might be a moving away from a different stage where you feel less. So it's like if one thing is too scary, you overindulge in another one, not to go there. So when you say I don't really feel much or anything in the stage 2, this might also be a sign that there's something in there. This is just my resonance speaking, because I'm like, okay, what's the scariest thing for Ashley is to be helpless and stuck and no way out. This is never something she would ever want to say about herself. This is like almost like shadowed out and can't be a part of her identity, that I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna like surrender and have no plan and just like be in this state, and I don't even have a way out. It's just, and this is to me also like surrender, because you always can ask yourself, what do you need in order to get through that stage? And in order to get through stage 2, you need complete surrender in complete hopelessness. And this is the scariest thing ever. We see it in all our clients, our processes. Well, who does that? Who can do that? It takes so much trust and courage and bravery and love and to be able to do that. Everybody can fight when they know there's an end to it. But how about surrendering when there's no end to it? So a lot of times, also for you people at home listening, you can ask yourself, what am I dancing around almost with my life?
Yeah, it resonates hugely. You imagine have you ever heard me say like I just sat for a day in silence, like in state number 1?
Yeah.
When the thought of going to like a Vipassana, I'm just like, no, there's not enough action happening. There's not enough this happening. Not saying you have to go do that, but there's one of our colleagues, Nina, who's like we're so opposite, and we can really appreciate each other for the opposites. Like she takes like sometimes half a day to just go sit in silence in the forest and just notice what's present. And last week I actually had ChatGPT like roast me very intensely. Like I was like, no, roast me harder, daddy, go more, roast me, make me regret this, and kept going. And one of the things it said was like, you teach about nervous system regulation, but your calendar looks like a cokehead was building a Jenga tower. And then I actually opened my Google Calendar and I was like, yeah, that's literally what it looks like. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious to see what's going to come up for you boys. We can just find our own personal development plan here. Like, look at these 4 different quadrants, and then you know, like, where you need to give a bit more time and love to. I have kind of been doing that because my Mondays now are like Ashley Day, like no meetings, doing whatever I want to do, which of course doesn't mean I'm not doing work, but like I just went and edited all these videos from the retreat I did, and I was like, it's so creative, and I just like didn't talk to anyone all day, and it was really nice. And so trying to find those spaces with like meeting free days is quite important for me.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that when I listen to the way we talk about these things, there's a slightly pathologizing tone to it, and I just want to bring that in, that your calendar may look like a cokehead built a Jenga tower, but the quote unquote birth trauma also led you to do amazing things. Like there's no one in this room and no one that I know that understands and embodies the energy of anger better than you do. So I also want to bring in that all these traumas, when they are unshamed, hold a tremendous gift, not only for yourself but also for the people around you. And yeah, I feel it's important to mention, and also to appreciate your response to that, what you did with that, and how powerful that is.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Tim.
I love that.
And that is, that's a good compliment. That's a good compliment, because it's like, yeah, we could talk about how bad this is and how much, your nervous system, you're a nervous system therapist or whatever, and you don't have your shit together. That's not true. Like, nobody knows about a very distinct kind of quote unquote dysregulation or overactivation better than you. And you've become an expert in it because of your struggle, because of what you went through. And this is the hero's journey. That's the best thing you can do. And I found that remarkable and amazing. And I think that's true for all of us in our own regards.
And it's also a story I'm not going to get too attached to as well.
Yes, good.
Hopefully.
The word that comes up for me is alchemy. It's like
perfect. It's my business name. Great.
What a word. What an underappreciated, underused word.
Is that irony? I can't
Yeah.
It is irony, because if you ask ChatGPT what should I name my coaching course for? Call it personal alchemy.
Yeah.
But it's such a good word.
Emotion
It really,
it's an amazing word. We love some alchemy. Why did that come up, Jannick?
Yeah, because it describes the process, because it's a big energy, trauma or wounds or whatever, and the word trauma is already pathologizing, but this moving away from this, resistance to it or whatever, that's drive, that's energy. And either you put it inwards, pathologizing, or you alchemize it into something great. And this moving away, for example, if it's true, this moving away from phase 2, from helplessness, whatever, it's been alchemized in Ashley's life into helping thousands of people get in touch with the energy that they most repress. And the healing bubble couldn't use an energy more than they need the energy of anger, this and greatness. And so it's a gem. Like, Ashley is a gem in the spiritual world, where finally she talks about the thing that everybody tries to avoid, that goes into spirituality. And she can only do that because of this moving away, because of this thing that happened to her in her life. So that's, to me, the definition of alchemy: to alchemize that into something great, into something impactful, and express it.
Yeah, and that's so I have two impulses. One is that we definitely should talk about alchemy in one of our upcoming episodes, because the process of alchemy is really interesting, like the Jungian take on it.
Your
And I
triggers on it.
just thought about it. Yeah, and I just I just thought about it, and the process of alchemy is, or what we just talk about, like this, taking something that is dark, adding more things and adding understanding and love to it, and then this thing transforms into something new. That is also, tell me what you think, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But it's also resembling the birth process. You're in this really dark place, and everything is and then the canal open, and you see the light, and all of a sudden you're reborn. And I think that's a pretty cool analogy for rebirth. Like if you're struggling with quote unquote anger issues or like burnout or whatever for your whole life, it's like you're in this dark night of the soul, and this dark womby place, and you feel like you're being pushed out, and something in you wants to come out, but it's not really there. And then at some point you're letting go, and you're actually letting it come to the surface, and letting it grow up and mature and integrate into your life.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And what comes up for me is it's both one of the most beautiful, loving things in the world, and also it's very horrible at the same time. If an alien comes to this planet and it's like, so how are you guys, how do you come into existence? And then they look a 12-hour birth process and they're like, what the fuck? I'm traumatized for life. And it's like it can be very cruel, and for some people, like when they can't even look at it, or they have to vomit, or whatever. It's that, and it's the beautiful magical process of a life being born into this world, which is, yeah, one of the, if not the most sacred things that can happen.
It's very coincidental because this morning I watched a reel where this chiropractor was talking about C-section babies and showing how, through not having gone through the passage, their lumbar spine and their head are all like in the wrong place. Like the spine hasn't adjusted, the head has not been shaped. There's a lot of medicine that comes from having gone through that process. Also, all the mucus plug, or whatever it is that they go through, and the baby picks up on all of these certain certain aspects that I don't know what it's called, maybe you can help me with the word, like it's mucus that they go through, and then they get maybe a better immunity. And then there's certain aspects, because my sister was C-section and she had asthma really bad, and I never have like much stuff with my lungs growing up. And I'm curious, has the Stanislav guy written about C-section as well?
Yeah, this is big for me as well, because my partner, she came into this world with a C-section, and so I want to find out about this as well. So far, I haven't read anything about it, just very, very briefly when he was analyzing other psychologists, but I'm sure he did. Maybe we can find out about it, or Tim already did. He's always doing this.
Tim's our in-house researcher, typing away. But let me hear about the rest of your birth stories.
Yeah, let's continue with the birth stories. Tim, what about you?
I know that my mom, and that's also interesting how there's a story attached around my birth. Like I don't have too many details around my birth. I think I was late as well, and also my birth took like, I just said 12 hours, but I think my mom always said like 23 or something. It was a long process for her, like, and painful and stuff. And she always told, like, the way she framed it was, you never wanted to be born, or you didn't want to come out, or something like that. Like something, and you wanted to stay with me. You wanted to stay inside. And that is interesting, because that in parts, like I was having like issues with derealization symptoms, where my life felt like I felt like I was living life through like this veil of confusion, and like I felt distance from my own experience. And I had panic attacks, and I'm like, more, I'm more on the anxious side of things. So I think that's more like BPM 2. But yeah, it's interesting that I didn't want to leave that. I didn't want to leave that this union, and especially in the past days, I noticed that I live my life where in a way where I strive for a feeling of bliss, and like I do things to feel good and to feel happy and to feel bubbly. And when I don't feel that way, I think something is wrong, and I'm experiencing shame. And just lately, and that's so interesting when I look at this, I was thinking like, wait a second, Tim, what if being happy, I've read this and I taught this also for so many times, but sometimes, teachings are just landing over and over again in different ways. And that was for me in that moment, what if life doesn't need to be, you don't need to be happy all the time? What if, for example, you can be calm and like feel okay about yourself and feel okay about your life, but instead of being happy, you only feel relaxed, or you feel, I don't know, centered within yourself, or you have this healthy warrior energy. And as I talk about this, I look at the BPMs, and the BPM 3, which is one after the anxiety one, is warrior energy, is like this thing that Ashley just talked about, which I feel like in my life um, I'm integrating that as in this current stage of my life, where I'm like, okay, harmony, everyone being happy, me being happy all the time and bubbly, and so on and so forth, is not really the goal, because it's impossible to have that the entire time. So what that brings is like this thing of, okay, um, I want to be able to protect my energy and to live a life of meaning and to do the things that I want to do. I want to feel settled and protected within myself, and not always like reaching out for, oh, I need harmony, otherwise I feel bad. No, like I can be a grown up, I can be settled within my body, and I can be just a grown man. Like it feels like this boy or this kid or this baby, for that matter, inside of me was screaming for attention and was waiting for that grown, protective, settled, grounded man that is not relying on like dopamine or like happiness or harmony or whatever the entire time. And yeah, this is like, I guess is linking to my story, where I felt anxious about being born because I enjoyed the bliss, the happiness of the womb so much. And now I'm experiencing that I can be my own parent, and I can hold myself in that anxiety and replace it with something stronger and something more meaningful. So that's it. And I find interesting how the story that my mom always told me um, is also making sense in my life. Like, I still, a part of me doesn't want to live, doesn't want to leave the heaven of the womb space or childhood. And it's time to grow up.
Thank you, Tim.
Wow, yeah.
That was a tour de force. I can really feel that. Yeah, because also what I shared about the car crashes and all of these things, I feel like as we grow up, or as I grow up, healing to me means developing the capacity to hold myself in calmness and stability, and then embrace all the parts that are frozen in time and thaw them, and slowly bringing them back into the present, where they can actually feel safe. And for me as a man, that may not be safety, may not mean like always like hugging a child, but actually letting the child experience that there is some strong masculine presence that can hold the child and protect it if shit goes downhill. And I think that missing pieces. What's the BPM3 and what's also developing in my life right now.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. And one thing that just came up for me was like, there's this truth that you need to, and we all need to accept. It's like, you're never going to feel the same way again as in the womb.
Yeah,
It's
it's
over.
over. It's just a story. It's just it's not even a memory. It's even a memory is just a thought.
Just get over it.
In the end. Yeah.
As long as you hold on to, I want to feel like in the womb again, you're basically saying, I want to die. Because death, that's the desire for death that many people feel as well, the desire to go into the union. And it's moving away from life. It's like, I want to feel like that again, because this is not like that. It's not okay. It's I need to go back to union. I need to go to death. I don't want to live. It's all the same. So it's about embracing the struggle of the birth, which you seem to not want to do from the very beginning of like going through the struggle, and then also the success of the rebirth of the birth. So I'd also be really curious, how was the birth? Was it a celebration? Was it like you do all this fucking fighting, and then you're celebrated, and you almost get you get life in return, like going through the struggle, and now you're getting life. You know, it's a triumph. Or you come out and something is wrong with you, or like it's like you don't feel like, oh yes, I made it through, and now the triumph, like you said. And then you learn that all the struggle doesn't do anything. It's worth nothing. It's not getting me anywhere. I don't have control. If I fight, afterwards comes the whatever, the suffering or whatever it was. And then this is another pattern that plays out in your life.
I've thought of a song that you
Jannick,
can use as your like mantra for when you have those moments.
Sing
back
it. Sing
to
it.
life, back to reality. Just like play that.
Did you just make that?
No,
did you
that's
just
a
make that
song.
up?
I don't know who sings it. I'll send it to you.
I don't know who sings it. That's such a sweet way of phrasing that. I don't know who sings that song. But Jannick, tell us who's how is the song of your birth going? Sing us the song of your birth.
I don't have a song yet. It might come up as I am going to share the story. Or I could, say a lot about my birth, but I want to focus on one aspect, because this is just the one that came up, and it's nice to be focused.
I love how your body language just completely changed. It was like I just invited you to talk about your favorite hobby, or you just leaned back and was like, yeah, of course. Like when I think about my birth, I think about many things, but I just want to focus on one thing today. So my birth, where do I start?
This is good, because it's like, now that I've been reading about this book, and I've been, thinking about and re-experiencing some of the emotions and stuff like that, it's almost like I took away, like now it's fun. It's not so vulnerable anymore. So now I lean back and I'm like, yeah, I love to talk about my birth. And the vulnerability moved away when you already have a prepared story or a thing that you want to talk about, because it's so exciting. Or you found out, like I can talk about myself. I found out so much about myself with this particular thing about my birth. Let me tell you about it. And it becomes more about the excitement of like sharing that than it becomes about actually the what does it mean to me, what changes for me. So thank you for noticing the change of my body language. I translate it into like moving away from vulnerability almost.
Or just you being excited about something that you like talking about.
It's both.
I mean, that's the thing. There's
That's
many
true. Yeah, there's the
ways to look at this.
pathologizing, the negative way of seeing it, or the positive one. I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
You are. So let's share your
Yes, I'm gonna
excitement.
share it. So,
I want to be. I want to say thank you for sharing. When you stop sharing,
so
that's the ballpark.
my mom, she was very convinced at the very beginning. I was the firstborn, that she is gonna get a girl, and she didn't check for the gender.
Ah,
She's just like, yeah, it's gonna be a girl, of course, because
ah.
I have all the sisters and all the people in my family. They all get girls. So I'm gonna get a girl, no doubt about it. So you can already imagine what that might do to the baby, me in the womb, when it's like, when that's the, I love the expression of Ashley earlier, when that's in the emotional field. It's almost like, why this dissonance between I'm a man, not yet, but I'm a man to be, and she's treating and sending me this energy of as if I'm a daughter. So a dissonance between the masculine and the feminine energies there from the very beginning in the womb already. So it might be that even in the womb already, the sense of I am not what she wants me to be or expects me to be. I need to be but I want to be one with her. I'm her. I need to be what she wants me to be. So this huge theme in my life of I need to please the woman. I cannot disappoint the woman, the feminine. Not life, in general. I need to be what they need me to be. So huge lack of authenticity there. And then this is why I also brought this up, Tim, when coming out of the birth canal, my birth, then there was this huge moment, right, of a surprise, or you could say disappointment. And it's probably a bit of both, of this,
Mm.
like, I fight, I come out, and it's like, oh, it's a boy. And immediately, maybe afterwards, oh, but I love my baby no matter what. All of these things can happen at the same time. But there must have been and there the German word matches really well. It's like a delusion. It's like a Enttäuschung. So something that she thought or felt before was, not matching with reality.
Yeah. Her baby Jannica was a Jannick.
Exactly. And this after
How's
you
it?
fought for 12 hours
Yeah.
and you experienced the most pain you've ever done, and then you come out, and this is all, I can't confirm, like, my mom doesn't say that this is what she felt, and she probably is not, it's not conscious, but and this is just interpretation, and it just matches with the whole theme of my life, and there's a lot of resonance in my body. So this is why I'm sharing this, not because my mom told me, yeah, then I was disappointed when you came out of the birth canal. Yeah, and so this then led also to me mapping the repression of masculinity in general in my life. And there's been sexual assault by the masculine in my family, and also, like, not only sexual assault but also violence. And so there's this, probably ingrained into my family, is this belief of the masculine is harmful and dangerous, but it's not coming from me, it's not coming from my own experience. So it's so hard for me, or it's been so hard on my healing journal for me to grasp that, because it's not mine. It's not my experience that the masculine is dangerous or harmful, but somehow it's a belief in my DNA, in my body, or however you want to call it. And therefore a very, very deep level of unconscious repression of the masculine, of the, also of other things that we attribute to that, with, like, going out there, penetrating, showing yourself, expression, anger, dominance, aggression, whatever. And I can also see some roots there, and even before that. So there's a lot of mapping possible when I look at the themes of my life and at my birth.
Would you say that then the BPM 1 and 4 were the ones most impacted for you? Like what you received whilst in the womb, and then what happened when you came out?
Yeah, could be, 'cause those are the ones that I was talking about now the most. I mean, I've never really thought about it. I feel like I have something like some resonance with what Tim shared earlier. This like BPM 2, this hopelessness, is also a big part of it, but it might be related to the disappointment of phase 4, where I'm like, why do the fighting if it's worth nothing or whatever? This is like a sense I had for a long time, is it's not worth it to go into my power, to stand up, to fight, to go through it, because in the end, what's it all worth? It's life is. And then I have, when I go really deep into my emotional repression work, a lot of times two things come up. One is, don't disappoint. Don't disappoint. You can't disappoint. You can't disappoint. Very, very deep fear inside of me. And the other one is, it's unfair. It's unfair. It's unfair. So this belief, like the world is unfair, and this is unfair if you explain it that way. And also, disappointment also plays in very well with what I shared. So not sure which BPM exactly, but yeah, there's some resonance when you say 1 and 4, because those were the ones I emphasized in my sharing.
And interesting, the constellation of us three then, like you've got two people in the space who are more in the two quadrants that you've not really resonating with as much. Funny, I just realized the story I also identify with as being an Enneagram 3, which is also the quadrant I associate with. So just found that very funny. But thank you for sharing, Jannick. I also wanted to say it before Tim.
Thanks for sharing, brother.
But that's not to diminish that at all. But I'd be curious which one of those, if you had to pick one of the 4, maybe you'll figure this out later, like which one, maybe it shifts as well during time. You don't have to pick. I just like to make people pick.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe then we realize who the 4th person is missing from our quad, our trio.
Most growth or most underrepresented is BPM 3. It's the part that I don't like to see, look away from, don't own, so there's growth in that.
And that's where the interruption for C-section babies is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go through that part, the fighting part. So it's also interesting to, maybe I'm going to start asking my clients what their birth process was a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Maybe everyone can write in the comments if you feel to share, like, if you notice one of those quadrants and what if any hiccups were there. Maybe people don't have any hiccups and they're like, all 4 were perfect. In which case, they're probably not listening to this podcast because they're having a happy life that doesn't need any solving.
So if you listen to this, we know you're doing really, really bad. I'm sorry for you. All of our listeners are depressed. Stop listening. Spend time with normal people. Stop talking about birth trauma. Stop talking about Atlantis. Stop talking about your past life regression as into a witch. Nobody cares. Go
Stop
partying.
Healing, start living.
Exactly.
There is a topic at some point about later on another episode that why do we all see battlefields when we go to past life trauma? It's like, why are we always in medieval England, ancient Egypt? Like, why are they always in the same places? There's like, no one's just like, yeah, I was just in Birmingham working in a coal mine. Like, I've never heard someone say that. It's always like beautiful, dramatic places. Like, no one's just like in a slum in India. Like, they're just, it's always the same imaginative spots. So I'm calling that out.
Or like, just I don't know, like a soccer player, middle of the century.
It's never like within the last 100 years. It's always like 5, 6, 1,000 years ago. Like, never recent.
One aspect might be the intensity. You just answered it yourself. You said dramatic. one aspect of it is, why is it there? It's unprocessed. It's very, very dramatic and very, very intense. And that's also how we use these past life memories to express something really intense that can't be expressed any other way than, I was hit by the sword in the chest, and then the blood came out, and I fell down, and everybody stabbed at me and stamped and run over me, and then I still survived, but then I lost too much blood and I slowly died in so much pain. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel here. This is the contraction right here next to my chest. That's it, on point. And nothing else on the planet could express it better.
Maybe people who don't listen to the podcast have past life regressions to being a cashier at Walmart. Who knows? Just past life. I can
Is
feel
it
the money
unprocessed?
in my hand. Banana. Yeah.
It's not unprocessed.
Just a really boring past lives, to be honest. Not even Atlantis. Fuck off.
Amazing, boys. This is very insightful. Thank you.
So that's it. That's a wrap.
That's a burrito.
Tasty little wrap. That's a burrito. Thank you all for listening. This was the Spiritual Bypassers podcast. As always, leave a comment. Tell us about your BPM.
This new person that just joined.
It's one of my ancestors. He's coming through. Like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode. We love you. We hope you're not depressed. Still, we hope you join us for the next episode. And take care. Bye-bye.